Hello, my friends. Google is cratering. I was totally wrong. I'm going to talk about that. We're also going to get into cash secured puts as well as covered calls. Should be a great video today, so stick around.
Want to make your money work harder? Enjoy another video with Adam Kahn, the rational investor, on stocks, real estate, and crypto. Subscribe now for your weekly dose of investment insights and hopefully learn a thing or two.
So, after reading a paper by Ben Reitzes, who was actually a friend of mine in high school, so it's really cool to see how he's done well, and he's actually on CNBC from time to time. That's besides the point. But he emailed me a copy of their research on Google. I was a little bit lazy about reading it, and unfortunately, I waited until today's down move to start reading through it. And I wanted to argue with him because I've always been bullish Google and figured that stuff is a little bit blown out of proportion. But unfortunately, after the stock move and reading what he wrote, I think he's probably right in his analysis. His comparison to Eastman Kodak is a really good one. I think that some of it is a little bit off, but I also think some of it is spot on in terms of it being a little bit outdated. I just think that, basically the point of it is how many people are going to want to search through all the junk that we get from all the marketing versus when we go to something like a chat GPT or something else that just gets us the answer we're looking for, similar to what search was originally. So I think that's part of the problem. And then a notation about how most people under the age of 24, like, they don't really necessarily think to go to Google initially because they're using things like chat gpt to help with homework and papers and things for school and finding their answers already. And it's kind of changing Google from being a verb. Now they're not using I'm going to chat GPT it. I'm not really sure what language they're using, but similar to like Kodak or some of the others that kind of thought the technology was changing, and yes, there's going to be digital cameras, but will probably be side to side. Over time, that really wasn't the case. And now that I read the letter and I thought about his arguments, like I said, I really wanted to email him back and say, Ben, I just don't see it that way because I think X, Y, or Z. But as I was reading it, I thought, oh crap, I missed it. And I don't mean that the wrong way, but really I did. I thought it would be side by side. I thought search would continue to grow at the same time that the AI models would. And here's the other problem with it. Google can't really transition because they have to protect the revenue that they're coming in already. Search is over 50% of their earnings. So they're going to have to continue to invest in order to keep those sales coming in, to try to keep it to be something of value going forward. And I think slowly it diminishes because I think as we get older, the ones of us who are stuck in our ways and still go to Google, that the younger generation probably isn't going to use it at all necessarily, and it really could disappear. Now, they still have YouTube, which you guys know I love, and they have Waymo, and they have some other things going on. But with search being over 50% of their valuation, I think you kind of have to value the company without it, and hope that they figure something out. Because if they transition to a different type of model that's similar to the AI stuff, what do their advertisers do? What are they advertising for? How do you promote it? Like, they're going to have to figure out how to drive advertising sale through an entirely different process of search. I really wish I had read the research paper a little bit earlier because I'd like to think I would have been open-minded enough to actually agree with it the way that I do today. I don't think it's the stock price move that's making me change my mind on it. It does make me a little concerned going forward that the decreased valuation and the low PE actually makes sense because you're only going to be able to use about 45% of the profits and then a diminishing profit from the other end of search. Google is one of my larger positions in my set it and forget it account. And in some ways, I kind of hope that they figure something out and they're able to turn the ship around. But to be fair, I really do think we're going to see search continue to diminish and they're going to have a really tough time making a change. I don't think it's that they're stuck in their ways. I think it's that they're stuck in a bad position. You have people paying you money for advertising for a certain way of doing business that things are changing. And if you have an ability to change your own business model, if you do that, you're going to hurt your own advertising sales. So I really think they're in a really tough position. I think you have to discount the search. I think it sucks that I was so wrong about it because I would have lightened up the position. I don't know if I would have gotten out or if I would have just made it smaller. But to be fair, I think today's move is correct. I at first I thought, oh, it's like Netflix when they had a drop in subscriber base. There'll be something that turns around and you'll see search continue to grow. But when I read the paper, part of what bothered me so much is when I think of myself and when I use Google, and over the years, how it's become less and less about finding what I was looking for and more about who's paying to be at top of the search. And I have to search through so much to actually get what I'm looking for. And even though I don't use ChatGPT, I recognize that the people who do, when they look for something, they don't get all that junk mixed in. It tends to try to look for the answer that they're trying to get to. It might be wrong. It has a long way to go until it does a better job. But I don't think that takes that long. I think by next year, we're probably going to see search diminish in the volume that it does, which is obviously going to impact their earnings. So the other thing I wanted to talk about, because somebody in the chat section asked me to, was cash secured puts as well as covered calls. And not just explaining them, but talking about how they can not do well, which is part of what can happen using them. So we're going to talk about how they work, how I use them, how you can lose money potentially with them, and depending on how you use the products. But I think they're a great way to generate some income and maybe some yield and turn stocks that necessarily are necessarily not dividend stocks into ones that pay similarly to them, depending on how your brain works and how you think about them. So I'm going to get into that, and I'll use some examples that I make up, like I always do, just to talk you through it and see if you're comfortable doing them, because I love using options to try to generate a little extra revenue. Now, as always, this is not financial advice. Please don't listen to me for any financial decisions you make. You need to do your own research on what works for you, as well as maybe reach out to a financial advisor to decide how you want to set things up for your future. So, what is a cash secured put? And I'll start with that first. And how might you use it? So, let's use stock company widget. And for ease, let's say a stock company widget is trading at $100 a share. And I want to buy company widget, but I don't really want to pay $100 a share. My timeline is whenever, but I think it's worth $85 and I'd be willing to buy it there. Well, what I can do instead of putting a buy order in and a good till cancel and just leaving that and waiting for it to get to 85 and recognize that it may never get there, I can sell a cash secured put and I get paid to put my bid in. With me so far? Now, what that means is let's say I go out 3 months and for my 85 put 3 months from now, maybe it's $1 bid at $1.20, and I can sell one of them and I will collect $1 on my option. Now, each option that I sell is for 100 shares, so my dollar would get me approximately $100 to sit and wait and hope to buy the stock at 85. Now, here's the way you can lose money. First of all, you have to be really willing to buy it at $85. If the stock plummets and has bad news, and let's say all of a sudden it's at $60, you've still committed to buy it at $85. Depending on your goal and what you do with your investing, if you're a long-term investor, doesn't really matter. If you would have bought it at 85, you get that extra dollar no matter what happens with the stock. But if you're somebody who gets nervous and tends to do things like get out of a trade if it goes against you or anything like that, the problem is you've just paid $85. You've gotten the $1 for your cash secured put because you had $8,500 in the account. That was the part I guess I left out. You should have the money to be able to buy that stock if that put gets exercised. But if it drops to 60, well, you're down $15 on the stock. You've collected an extra $100. You're down $1,400, and maybe it's when that stock gets assigned to you. So that's the risk on it. It can and does happen. What I like about that is I generally do have a price where I want to buy things, and I can wait and I'll put that order in. And if the stock never goes down, well, I collect the $100 no matter what. At least I've gotten paid something in the meantime while I've hoped to buy it at 85. And let's say it takes 6 months or a year before it actually gets to the price that I'd like to buy it at. I can continue to sell the cash secured puts and collect a little bit of money while I'm waiting for it to hopefully get to my price target where I want to buy the stock. That's what I like about cash secured puts. Now you can reverse it and do a covered call. I think more people are familiar with calls, but we'll use the same stock. Let's call it stock widget, and it's trading $100 a share. And let's say you'd be willing to sell that stock if it got to $115. Well, you can look at the options choices, find how much you could sell a 115 call at whatever date and time that you're okay selling the stock. And similar to the put, whatever the bid price is, you collect that money for selling the call. Same thing the other way. Let's say they come out with phenomenal earnings and the stock shoots up to $150 a share. If you've sold a 115 call, you have still committed to selling it at $115. It doesn't matter that the stock is now trading 150. If it's at 150 at the date of the expiration, you're still selling at 115. If you collected an extra dollar, well, you keep that extra dollar. So it's like you sold it at 116. And if it doesn't even get to 115, you get to keep that dollar anyway. What I like about that is for the stocks that, yes, I'm willing to sell at whatever price that I have in mind, I collect that extra money. And I kind of think about it the way that the people on YouTube talk about it, where I feel like you can't lose with them. The reality is you can. It is a trade. And I really used to think you can when I used to trade on the floor. As I've gravitated off the floor, I kind of think of it as free money. It's like a dividend check. The negative is if I sell the covered call and it goes above my strike price, yes, I have to sell it at my strike price. If it's gone way higher, I've lost that additional revenue, but I was willing to sell it there. And instead of putting in an offer to sell it there, if I sell the call, I get that extra premium, which is why I see it as free money. And it's a way for me to kind of get yield on this. I don't do it with Meta or Amazon or stocks that I just want to own forever. I mean, in my trading account, a little bit, but I don't want to get taken on the calls and really regret being out of the position. But there are plenty of stocks that I have, like Target, for example, when I talked about it yesterday. If it gets back up to $110 a share or so, yeah, I would absolutely consider selling an 140 or an $150 call. I've put on a larger position than I probably intended to by buying a little in a few different accounts, so I didn't feel like I had a big position on, but I'd be happy to collect that extra premium. It already pays a 4.7% yield. So if I'm picking up another 1 or 2% over the year, to me in my brain, that means I'm making like a 6 or 7% dividend check to own Target, which I'm happy to own because I think they're undervalued right now anyway. Now, that's how I use cash covered puts and covered calls, or cash secured puts and covered calls. I'm not sure everybody can use them differently. You can use them as a trade. I use the puts to get into positions because, again, I see it like free money. If I was willing to buy Tesla at $250 a share, I would look out at the different strike prices or the different dates of the strike price being available, see where I'm getting paid what I would like to in order to sell that put and potentially buy the stock there. The other thing is when earnings come out, the volatility goes way up. You tend to get more of a premium for it. Now, the stock obviously moves higher or lower or can move a whole bunch when they report earnings. But I tend to like selling the options around earnings time because of how much more premium you're getting. Of course, sometimes it really blows right through that number in either direction and it can really go far. But I find for the most part, it doesn't go quite as far as people expect. and it does real well. And sometimes I get taken and it goes a little bit through. I mean, obviously anything can happen, but I really enjoy selling the options. I feel like the profitable side of options is to be the person who sells them or writes them versus the people who buy them, because I feel like buying options is more of a gamble. Now, do me a favor in the comment section. Let me know if that was understandable how I explained cash secured puts and covered calls, or if that was just so confusing. It's like, what the hell are you talking about? Because I do think it's a good strategy that anybody can implement. Just be prepared that you have to be buying or selling 100 shares of stock. One option is 100 shares, so you can't trade less, which actually brings me, I tried to reach out to Robinhood and SoFi when I get these ideas because, my brother used to be a professional options trader on the floor of the Chicago Board of Trade. I find options really interesting, and I think it's a mistake that the only way you can trade them is in lots of 100. I mean, if this was back, I was looking at Nvidia when it was trading like $1,000 a share, and I thought, there's probably a lot of people out there that only have 5 or 10 shares, or might want to buy or sell a call for only 3 shares, or sell a put, or whatever they want to do. And I don't understand with today's technology why that's not an option. No pun intended. As soon as it came out of my mouth, I realized. But really, I thought about it and I'm like, geez, I get it for when they originally started this stuff. But the way things have changed and the way people are able to buy even fractional shares, and I wouldn't do fractional options, but the way that they're able to buy smaller amounts, why is there not a system in place to be able to trade 1 share of an option instead of having to do a lot of 100? And my hope was to actually be the one to manage the trade, because it's easy to do. All I have to do is mimic what the prices are of the companies that could allow for it. So you pick the top traded options companies, Palantir or Amazon if it's one of them, maybe Meta or whatever. I'm just making it up. But whatever ones have the highest volume of trades and options, why wouldn't they create these micro options that allow people to trade smaller? Because I'm sure there's demand for it. And as a trader, it would really be easy for me to just be a penny wider than that market if I needed to be, to mitigate the risk that would be associated with it. So, like I said, I tried reaching out to both Robinhood and SoFi because I thought they'd be the most open to the idea. But no response, which is pretty typical of the big companies. It's only been a few times I've gotten responses from some of the companies where they've actually communicated and had conversations. I think it would be good for them if they were better at getting through that stuff, but I think the cost of employees and people who actually, like, it's not going to go to the CEO, and I'm not going to bang on the door every day to try to do it. It's not necessity. I just think it'd be cool and maybe it'd be fun. I mean, my God, how could Robinhood not be interested? They've already made it possible where they're going to be able to do essentially gambling on their platform, which floors me. And I think they're actually going to do extremely well going forward. I think they're going to pick up more clients. I think there are plenty of people who do stock trading who want to do sports gambling as well. And if I heard correctly, I think they're even going to allow for political gambling as well, which rather interesting. I'm a little surprised on some of it. I don't know how they've gotten around the regulations. I don't know if it's just considered online gambling or what they've decided for it to make it okay, but I think that's going to help Robinhood's stock over the next 5 or 10 years. I'm really amazed. Anyway, kind of shocked to see how hard Google got hurt in a day, just from the first time that they're kind of showing a decrease in search. But I actually do get it. I want to thank Ben for his paper. Thanks for emailing that over to me. Quite honestly, I would have been fighting the market if I saw it down today and thinking I wanted to buy some. But that's just me being old and stubborn and thinking I'm right. And kind of like your description of what Kodak said, where they envisioned it being side by side, that people would still use film, but they'd also use digital. I thought the same with search. Like, why wouldn't people still use Google while still using these AI models? But the reality is, kind of like a digital camera, why would they still use the Google search that they have in place currently when you don't have to siphon through all the marketing? I mean, I think back to the original when it was Google and Yahoo, and I forget who the other ones were. And search was kind of search, and you kind of had to siphon through to find what you wanted, but it was different. It wasn't to the guy who was paying the most money in marketing. Now it's like it's all this marketing stuff that you have to work your way through, and you might have to go to the third or fourth page, and I'm not searching that deep to find what I wanted. I'm moving on to the next. If the AI models are skipping all of that and it's changing the way that the advertisers are actually getting viewed, I think that creates a problem. I think the sell off today is justified. Again, not financial advice, just my thoughts on it. And I'm curious to see what happens going forward. Anyway, I hope everybody's doing well. I hope your Wednesday's been awesome. I'm going to go now because I want to wait for the Fed to report. I know they're not going to do anything, but I'm curious if Powell speaks and what he has to say in terms of the economy. I do think things are slowing down. I kind of wonder if the market's still not going to have a correction, though, even if things slow down, that we'll see earnings kind of soften a bit, maybe in terms of revenue, but maybe the profits do better because the margins will be okay because people will be able to blame the tariff and raise their prices. But I guess we'll see. Anyway, do me a favor. If you haven't already, hit that subscribe button, smash the like button, make all sorts of comments. Let me know what you thought about the options explanation. Do you want me to explain it a little bit more? Do you have a stock you want me to take a look at, see what I think of the options? I think it works for almost anything, except when the stock has like no volatility, it's maybe not worth selling the options unless you really do want to buy it at a certain price or sell it at a certain price, because again, I kind of see it as free money. So even if it's only 10 cents, why wouldn't I pick it up? Have a great rest of your day. I'm going to try to chat tomorrow, but I'm going to be cooking. I'm making ribs for my buddy coming over. I'm going to get them in the smoker and hopefully have some delicious ribs. If I can do the video while I make the ribs, I will. But I generally start pretty early in the morning because I got to smoke them for 7 hours, and I'm probably going to have them out by 3 or 4. And if people are sleeping, I'm not going to want to sit there videoing and chatting at 6 or 7 in the morning while I prep the ribs. Anyway, have a great day. Again, hit that like button, smash the subscribe, reverse that, make some comments. Thanks, guys.